didn't realize the city had gone silent until I heard my own breath echo. It was faint, just the exhale soft and shallow, but it sounded enormous in the stillness. That's when I knew. The city wasn't just asleep, it was listening. The air no longer moved the way it used to. No distant car horns, no thrum of underground trains, not even the buzz of neon humming over cracked pavements. Only the long, low hum of whatever remains after everything else has left. I'm still broadcasting, because I can't stop, because if someone out there is still turning the dial, still scanning the static for a human voice, I need them to know you're not the only one left. My name is Lawrence Webb. Before all this, I was just a voice on the overnight radio, late lines they called it. Quiet frequencies for insomniacs, long-haul drivers, and broken sleepers who didn't want company but couldn't bear silence. Now the show has no producer, no switchboard, no guests, just me, a signal, and whatever remains of New Avalon. We used to call it the Last City, not with irony, but with hope. The last functioning outpost of a failing civilization. Geothermal power, vertical farms, drinking water recycled 100 times, every bit efficient, every choice optimized. It worked until it didn't. No one heard the collapse. That's the strange part. There was no great explosion, no battles in the streets, no final broadcast from the government center. People just stopped being there. One day the queues at the ration centers were 10 people long. The next, they were 2. The next, no one came. I remember walking past the children's library and seeing a paper cutout taped to the window, a little cartoon bird with a speech bubble that read, "Back soon," but no one came back. The lights flickered out behind the glass, and the paper yellowed. We didn't even panic. We adjusted like we always do. People stayed in their flats, thinking maybe this was just another system reset, another rolling outage. The city had been managing itself for years. Why wouldn't it recover again? It didn't. First it was the trams. Then the water pressure dropped. Then the communications relay atop the East Tower went dark. Then came the quiet. Heavy, deliberate quiet. I speak into this mic every night now, though I don't know if it carries. The transmitter's old. The backup batteries are dying. I've rerouted enough cabling through the emergency banks to squeeze out maybe a few more weeks, but it's a guess at best. If you're hearing this, if the signal still threads its way through the dust and the dark, you might be wondering what's left. Let me tell you, the buildings are still here. The wind still moves through the alleyways like it's searching for someone. The clocks all stopped at different hours, but the sun still rises, and the shadows still stretch when it does. There's something else too, something I haven't said until now. I've started hearing things, faint murmurs in the static, like echoes from another broadcast bleeding into mine. It's not in any language I recognize, but it has rhythm, pattern. It feels intentional. The silence I'm starting to believe isn't empty. It's structured. It has shape. Something is shaping it. But I don't know whether it's human, or something older, or something new, but I think it's listening to me as I speak, and I think it wants me to keep going. So I will. The old city used to run a public archive of messages left behind, recorded memories, farewells, little moments of longing. I've recovered some of them from the central server. I'll read them soon. Maybe they'll reach someone who needs to remember, or maybe they'll remind something else that we were here. Let's begin. The first message I found was buried deep in the public memory bank, labeled simply, "Archived audio request, personal." No name, no date, just a file with a title written like a question. "Do you still remember the sky?" I played it 3 times before I realized it was never meant to be heard out loud. It was a whisper meant for one person, a kind of spoken letter, sealed in digital glass. But no one's left to collect it now. And maybe by reading it here, it can finally reach the ears it was meant for, or echo into the silence as proof that someone once cared. Do you still remember the sky? Not the one we projected on the dome, not the filtered blue of the shielding system. I mean the real one. The one with wind that tasted of rain and light that stung your eyes when you looked too long. I keep trying to recall the sound the birds made at dawn. I used to hate it, remember? Always said it woke me up too early. I would give anything now to hear that noise again, that messy, feathered chorus of ordinary life. I left the door open for you, like you asked. I couldn't stay longer. The filtration was breaking down. But I told the house to listen for your voice. If you came back, I told it to unlock for you. And if you found this message, it means maybe you did, or maybe someone else has. And that's fine too. I just didn't want the house to forget how to love you. That's how it ended. Not with a goodbye, just the sound of breathing. Tired, slow breathing. Then silence. I sat here in the booth for an hour after that. Not speaking, not moving, just listening to the emptiness it left behind. It's strange. These recordings, they don't feel like artifacts. They feel alive, like memory refusing to die quietly, like love built with its teeth clenched. They remind me that before the silence, the city was filled with people holding on to each other however they could. We weren't perfect. We were noisy and cynical and distracted, but we kept each other warm. And now, even in this hush, that warmth lingers in the tape hiss. Some nights when I can't sleep, I go to the roof and look out over what's left. The buildings aren't crumbling. That's the odd part. They stand perfectly still, like models, like placeholders for a reality that's paused itself mid-breath. The roads are swept clean by the wind. The bins haven't overflowed. Nature hasn't reclaimed anything. It's like the city is waiting for us to come back, or waiting for something else to arrive. I found a train last week, still on the tracks just outside the perimeter. All the lights inside were green, quietly glowing in the dark. No passengers, no driver, but everything perfectly intact, like it had just pulled into the station and was politely waiting for someone to step on. I didn't. I watched it for 20 minutes, then walked away. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way the lights flickered slightly as I moved closer. Maybe it was the way the door hissed open before I pressed the button. Or maybe I was just afraid of where it would take me. Afraid that it might take me somewhere real, somewhere final. You start to question everything when the noise stops. Not just the systems, or the timelines, or the theories. You question your memories, your instincts, even your senses. I walked past a market stall the other day. Fruit still stacked neatly, plastic sheeting pulled tight. I could smell oranges, real oranges. I haven't smelled that in months. I stood there and breathed in like it was holy, but when I reached out to touch one, my fingers went through it, like it was a projection, a memory stitched into the air. Or maybe I was the projection, and the fruit was real. Hard to tell anymore. Time doesn't pass the way it used to. The clocks say midnight, but the sun sets later every evening and rises in strange places. I think the city's rotation is slowing, or maybe it's the stars that are moving, or maybe the construct we call time has quietly unlatched itself from the grid. And yet, every night, I still come back here. I sit behind the microphone. I power up the transmitter. I speak. Not because I expect a response, but because something in me needs to send the signal, like leaving a candle lit in the window. If you're hearing this, and I mean really hearing it, not imagining it. There's something I want to ask you. Have you noticed how quiet your own heart sounds when you stop trying to outrun it? It's okay if the answer is no. It took me a long time to listen. I'll share another message next. This one's marked as refracted memory, civilian log, internal use only, which tells me it was never meant to reach the surface. But now everything is surface. There are no more locked doors, no more walls. The file was labeled refracted memory, civilian log, internal use only, but there's no one left to enforce the clearance levels. No warnings, no sealed access doors, just digital dust and a flickering audio file tucked into the remnants of a forgotten network. The voice begins without introduction. No name, no context, just the unmistakable weariness of someone who's been speaking only inside their own mind for far too long. They told us not to write it down, said memory was safer when it stayed soft, unfixed. They said that words on paper, or worse, in a recording, gave shape to things that should stay fluid. But I've stopped caring about protocol. It started in the lift. That was the first time I heard it. A voice, not a command or a warning, just humming. Faint, distant humming. A melody I didn't recognize, but that felt oddly familiar. The kind of tune you think you might have dreamed once, years ago, and forgot on purpose. I thought it was someone's earpiece bleeding through, but the lift was empty. I checked twice, and the humming didn't echo. It just existed, hanging in the air, vibrating in my teeth. It stopped when I stepped out, every time. It happened again in the atrium, then in the stairwell, then in the maintenance tunnels. Always when I was alone, always in places where no music should be. The others said I was tired, overworked. They ran a scan, nothing irregular, but they didn't listen closely enough. Or maybe they did, and chose not to say. I'm recording this because I think the city is listening back. I think it hears us in ways we don't understand. I think it has learned to hum to itself, like a child trying to stay calm in the dark. The voice ends with static, but not the sharp kind, more like breath caught in digital frost. I played the file twice before I realized something strange. The same hum she described is buried underneath the track. I didn't notice it at first, but if you isolate the lower frequencies, you can hear it. A droning tone, slow and distant, like metal vibrating under deep pressure. I've started hearing it outside the recording, too. I don't know if that means it's following me, or if it's always been here, and the recording simply gave it permission to rise. I walk slower these days, not out of fatigue, but to listen better. The sound gets clearer in stairwells. Concrete holds it well. Echoes seem to stretch and fold over each other like tired wings. It's not music in the human sense. No melody, no rhythm, just presence, a low vibration that makes the walls feel more alive than empty. I walked past an old laundrette this morning, still intact. The folding tables were clean, dustless, the machines all closed, and above the dryers, someone had written in thick marker pen, "Do not listen to the walls after midnight." I stood there for a long time. I looked at the machines, the clocks, the quiet humming air, and then I did what I always do. I disobeyed. I waited until 12:01, pressed my ear to the brick, and what I heard made me forget where I was. It wasn't words, not quite, but it was close, like syllables without a mouth, a message trying to form itself without language. And I got the distinct, chilling sense that whatever it was learning how to speak. I'm not afraid of it. Not yet. It feels older than malice, older than warning. It feels like patience. The city has always spoken to us, in its way through vibrations in the pipes, through blinking lights and patterns we dismissed as faults. We called them glitches. But what if they were grammar? What if we spent years ignoring a language slowly blooming around us? What if the city wasn't breaking down, but waking up? I wonder how many of us caught glimpses of it and turned away. How many people heard the hum and put in their earbuds? How many saw the sky shift by a fraction and blamed their glasses? Maybe that's why I'm still here. Not because I'm smarter or more careful, but because I noticed. And noticing in a world this quiet might be the only kind of prayer left. Tonight, I'll broadcast a few of the dream logs recovered from the sleep monitoring centers. They were meant for internal psychiatric use, but now they read like prophecies. The first one is marked, Dream 482, the house that remembered me. It's from a patient who never woke up. Let me pull it up. Dream 482, the house that remembered me. That's all the file said at the top. No name, no date, just a recording retrieved from the neural archive of a sleep clinic that no longer exists. The patient's voice is calm, fragile, but steady, like someone reading from a page they've memorized by heart but don't fully trust. I dreamed I came home, except it wasn't the home I live in. It was older, narrower. The wallpaper peeled in long, curling strips. The staircase creaked even when I didn't move. The smell was warm dust and cold stone. But it was mine. I remember saying out loud, "This isn't where I live," and the house replied, not with words, but with silence. A heavy, patient silence, the kind that waits for you to understand before it says anything at all. I moved from room to room. Each one was shaped by something I had forgotten. The upstairs hall had a door that didn't used to be there, and when I opened it, I saw my grandmother's hands, just her hands, folding linen at the end of a bed that no longer existed. She didn't look at me, but I knew she knew I was there. The kitchen had a light bulb that flickered like a heartbeat. Every time it went dark, the room changed slightly. Different chairs, different stains on the floor. One time I blinked and there were muddy footprints leading out the back door. I didn't follow them. I wasn't meant to. The house wasn't haunted. It wasn't threatening. It was simply remembering me. I lay down on a couch that once belonged to my father. I knew this because the cushion still had the shape of his back in it. And when I closed my eyes, the house sighed. Not in relief, not in grief, just as if it had been holding its breath since I left. Then silence. No outro, no interpretation, just a short note from the clinician. Subject entered cardiac arrest during REM, no cause identified. I've listened to that log a dozen times, and every time I hear something new. Not in the words, but in the space between them. The kind of space that holds meaning you can't name. The kind that only exists in dreams and empty rooms. It made me think about my own home, or what's left of it. I visited it 3 days ago, not far from the tower where I broadcast. 8th floor, stairwell. Steel ID. The door was still locked, but the handle had rusted into softness. I didn't force it, just stood there, hand hovering. I remembered the way the light used to hit the kitchen tiles at 9:30 each morning, the exact sound the fridge made before the compressor kicked in. I remembered the way I'd leave the bedroom door open a crack, even when I lived alone, just in case. But I didn't go in. Not because I was afraid of what I'd find, but because I wasn't sure the house would remember me. I've been thinking a lot lately about memory. Not just the memories we hold, but the ones that hold us. Places that remember our breath, objects that carry echoes of our fingerprints, chairs that still lean slightly to one side because we always sat that way. We think the world forgets us when we're gone, but what if it doesn't? What if the city remembers every door we closed too hard, every window we opened just to feel something move? What if the walls miss us? What if, in the absence of people, the world becomes one great remembering? I don't know if that should comfort me or terrify me, but it keeps me company. In these days, company is rare currency. Last night, just before sleep, I stood on the balcony and watched the fog roll in from the south. It moved differently, not like weather, like something searching. It didn't rise, it crept. And just before it swallowed the tree line, I saw shapes inside it, tall, impossibly thin shapes, not moving, just standing, watching. I closed the balcony door, not out of fear, just instinct. The shapes didn't follow. They never do. They wait. I've begun to wonder if they too are memories held not by minds, but by the land itself. Ghosts of people who haven't died, but simply fallen out of sequence, out of sync, like echoes waiting for their sound. Tonight, I'll share an entry from the city transit logs, recorded by an operator during the final week before silence. I found it on an old data stick wedged behind the transmitter panel. The file is marked North Line, Final Shift. It's dated 3 days before the city officially went dark. And the voice is male, mid-40s maybe. Northern accent, calm. He clears his throat once at the start, like he's been sitting in silence for too long and has to remind his own body how to speak. The log begins with a soft crackle, interference from the cabin mic, probably, but then it settles. And what follows is something between a confession and a quiet surrender. North Line, Final Shift, Operator ID 6049. Timestamp doesn't matter anymore, does it? The train's still running. That's the part I don't understand. No orders came in, no directives, but when I turned the key this morning, the panel lit up, all green, tracks powered. Destination set automatically, outer loop, zone 9 to central spire. I waited 15 minutes before moving, half hoping someone would bang on the door and tell me it was all over, or not to bother, or to get out, but no one came. I ran the route anyway, slid the train out like I'd done every day for 11 years. The tunnels were too quiet. No maintenance crews, no signal flags, no rats even, nothing moved. Station 1 was empty, so was 2. At 3, I thought I saw someone standing on the far platform. Long coat, face obscured. I slowed. The station lights flickered as I approached, and when they came back, the figure was gone. At Station 5, I opened the doors anyway, let the warm air in, sat there for exactly 90 seconds, just like protocol, a habit, a little ritual for ghosts. No passengers, of course, but the door panel registered weight, 34 kilograms. I checked twice, weight in cabin 3, but the cabin was empty, just a forgotten bag in the corner. No ID, no contents, just dust, as if it had always been there. I kept going. The track ahead was clean. That's what truly unsettled me. No debris, no corrosion, no sign that the world had stopped turning. It was as if the line knew I'd be coming, as if it had swept itself. By the time I reached Central Spire, the outside world was darker than it should have been. Not night dark, shadow dark, like someone had turned down the contrast. And yet, the station lights still worked. The door still opened, and a chime still rang to announce my arrival. A chime that no one heard, except maybe me. Then his voice falters. A pause, a long breath. He continues. I waited there a long time, not because I thought anyone would board, but because I couldn't decide whether to return. You see, I've had this feeling deep in my chest that the city doesn't want us to leave. Not violently, not with force, but gently, persuasively, like a room that makes itself just comfortable enough for you to stay a little longer. But I remembered something my daughter said years ago. We were on this very train. She was 7, asked me why we didn't ride it backwards, see where we'd come from, instead of where we were going. I told her that trains don't work like that. She said maybe they should. So today I reversed the line, took the train backwards, just to see, and something happened. The lights changed. Not brighter, not dimmer, just different. The ads on the tunnel walls weren't the same. I don't mean new ones, I mean old ones. Ads I haven't seen since the first years of operation. Ones for services that don't exist anymore. One of them had my own face on it, from 2 decades ago, smiling, young. Then came the noises. Not threatening, not random. Music, actual music. A piano melody drifting through the ventilation shafts. Not piped in, not programmed. Real. It played for 10 minutes, then stopped, and when it stopped, the wait in cabin 3 disappeared. That's where the recording ends. No signature, no sign-off, just that final sentence and silence. I went down to the transit line this morning, had to climb through a half-collapsed service corridor to reach it. The gates were sealed, but I could hear it, far below. A rumble, faint, steady. The train is still moving. No schedule, no passengers, just motion. A memory of purpose. A machine that refuses to forget what it was built to do. I stood there for a long while, hand on the rusted gate, and imagined that somewhere deep beneath the bones of this city, a man in a conductor's cap is still guiding his train through the dark, stopping at empty stations, opening his doors, letting in the nothing, letting it go again. Some say machines are cold, impersonal, but I think this one is lonely. Hungry? I think it runs not because it must, but because it doesn't know how to stop without someone telling it to. And maybe neither do I. There's another file. This one's different. No voice, no words, just a loop of sound. A strange pattern recovered from the atmospheric towers the day before their collapse. The label is cryptic. Echo band, layer 3, non-human signature? Let me isolate the signal. I've extracted the loop. It's not long, just under 45 seconds, and it repeats endlessly. You'd expect noise, interference, the usual detritus of a decaying signal bouncing off weathered satellites. But it's not that. The sound is too organized, too symmetrical. A pattern, not static, a structure built inside sound. It begins with a low thrum, like the echo of a cathedral door closing at a great distance. Then 3 pulses, evenly spaced. Then silence, a breath, then the pulses again, but slower, softer, like they're adjusting for your attention, waiting for your ears to catch up. When I first heard it, I thought it was mechanical, maybe a leftover from the tower's emergency failsafes. But I've studied the waveform. It's not synthetic. It breathes. And breaths, there's variation in the pulse width, a kind of hesitation on the 3rd beat, as though the signal is considering whether to speak again or wait. It's not broadcasting at us, it's echoing through us. A reflection, maybe, but of what? And here's the strangest part. The frequencies, especially the mid-range bands, resonate in a very particular way. If you play the loop in a narrow concrete stairwell, the sound doesn't echo like it should. It settles, like water in a basin. And if you sit very still, absolutely still, you begin to feel it rather than hear it, a sensation just behind the heart, a low vibration, like a memory that doesn't belong to you, trying to surface. I played it on loop in the west stairwell of this building, let it run for 2 hours, just sat there in the dark with a single lantern, watching the walls, watching myself. And after an hour, I started to feel watched, not threatened, not even observed, just noticed, as if something I couldn't see was quietly adjusting itself, ever so slightly, to become more present, more familiar. The echo doesn't come from above or below, it's between things, between steel and dust, between past and future, between moments that don't touch but still remember each other. I've come to believe it's not a message, but a door, and I don't think I'm supposed to open it. Not yet. The towers that registered the signal collapsed less than 24 hours later. No warning, no weather event. They simply folded inward like tired giants kneeling for the last time. No damage to surrounding structures, no seismic activity, just surrender. I wonder sometimes whether the signal was always there, that we just hadn't grown quiet enough to hear it, that the towers themselves, great receivers built to warn us of storms and chemical shifts and distant flares, had finally heard something else, something older, and they responded the only way they could, by falling silent. I still hear the signal sometimes, faintly, in the air ducts. It's not playing from my equipment, it just is, resonating through the copper bones of the building, not loud enough to record, not yet, but loud enough to feel. I'm beginning to think that the city itself is becoming an instrument, that the buildings, the rail lines, the glass, the stone, all of it is being tuned, adjusted, like a massive machine waiting to play its first note. And we were the static it had to clear before it could begin. Maybe that's why everyone's gone. Not vanished, not destroyed, just filtered out. Too much noise. Too many voices layered on top of one another, shouting into microphones, uploading grief, burying the silence that the world needed to hear in order to heal. And now there's only me, and you, perhaps, whoever you are, wherever you're listening from. Maybe this quiet is a kindness, a reset, a moment long enough to remember what it meant to be a part of the world, not simply sitting on top of it. I have a final file to share tonight. It's older, pre-collapse, a public service recording made for long-haul pilots, navigators of the high stratospheric transport corridors. A woman's voice, steady, professional, but you can hear it underneath the composure, the tremor. She knew something was ending. The file is named Descent Protocol, Slidal Transmission. The voice is clipped, calm, a practiced tone like she's reading from memory, not a script. But if you listen closely, really listen, you'll hear the breath catch just before the fifth word. This is pilot Aurelia Strand, flight registered under High Orbit Corridor A5, timestamp irrelevant, altitude 91,000 feet, and falling slowly under controlled descent. Atmospheric conditions, stable. Communication channel remains open. If anyone is receiving this, I'm bringing her down manually. You can hear the strain in the cabin, that subtle pressurized hum, the kind that only exists at the edge of space. You can almost feel the metal body of the aircraft tightening like a clenched fist. automated guidance systems failed approximately 13 minutes ago, not from impact or environmental corruption. They simply stopped responding, as if something else overrode them. No hostile interference detected, no damage. It was like the aircraft decided it no longer wanted to be guided by us. I debated ejecting. Protocol says I should have, but something in me, instinct maybe, told me not to, told me to stay, to listen. I turned off every non-essential system, let the silence settle in. Then I heard it. Not through the instruments, through the walls, through the seat, through the bones of this old bird I've flown for 14 years. It was music. No melody I could place, no harmony I could hum, just the sense of order, of purpose. Notes folding over themselves like light through water, and beneath it, a voice. She pauses, took longer than expected. En ID, wel tortuder King. And when she speaks again, it's no longer a report, it's something else. It didn't speak with words, it spoke with shape, with pull, with gravity. It asked nothing, demanded nothing, just invited. A soft curve in the air, a corridor, not of metal or code, but of intention. I followed it. The aircraft responded, not mechanically, willingly, like it wanted to go, like it remembered this path better than any I'd ever charted. Every dial flatlined, except the altimeter, which dropped in perfect thirds, every 33 seconds. We're descending now. The city's below. I can see the towers. No lights, no movement, just geometry in gray. But it's not dead. I can feel it, waiting. The strangest thing? I'm not afraid. I'm not even curious. I'm calm, like I've arrived at something my whole life has been moving toward. And only now do I realize it. Her voice softens to a murmur. I don't know if this is an end or a beginning dressed in silence. But if you're listening to this, if this signal finds you, don't panic. Just stop, be still, and listen. The city knows you're there. It's been listening longer than you've been speaking. I'm switching off all systems now, letting her glide the rest of the way. Maybe I'll land, maybe I won't, but wherever I touch down, it will be the right place. I feel that. I feel that more than anything I've ever known. Then, silence. Not static, not cut off, just a smooth, complete ending. She chose to stop speaking. She trusted the silence. I've played that recording 100 times, and every time it calms something in me, makes the stillness feel less like abandonment and more like invitation. The thought keeps returning to me. What if the silence isn't absence, but presence made perfect? We spent generations filling every space with noise, data, traffic, commentary, thought stacked upon thought, until the signal blurred into blur. And now, the city has stripped all that away. It has become at last a perfect receiver, a cathedral of still air and watching windows. And perhaps that's why we remain, you and I, to hear what comes next. There's a final piece I've been hesitant to play. Not because I fear what it contains, but because once it's heard, I suspect there'll be no turning back. It's labeled only Return Path Zealot found inside Tower 9. No audio, just text. Instructions maybe, or coordinates, or a story told so quietly it no longer needed a voice. Let me read it aloud. The Don Dung Camere, and why that er unhurer Balbefalt lock, that Anpal toply there, and rel the darke batteries, that the darke battery we take a for of the Erard. With the darke battery rest the darke battery, Ralph Coffeely, work forn hier down to red hier dive, wish Annie lay hoer, Luddy is big a day. The file was unlike any other. No metadata, no timestamp, just a plain text document hidden deep within Tower 9's defunct uplink server. It had no header, no author signature, just 6 lines of text, written without punctuation, without emphasis, like someone whispering something sacred, too quietly to disturb the dust. Here's what it said. Pure fairness of the fee. Give 'em eister bassing debts. Gust the bassing debts. Gust peckle bassing debts. Gust peckle bassing debts. Give aftical bassing debts. Gust peckle bassing debts. Gust peckle bassing debts. Walk until the wind changes. Vic panja the pairs panza that and could pause. Step only where light remembers you. Don't speak until the city asks speak. Don't turn back unless the shadows soften. If you find the gate, open it with silence. If it opens on its own, do not enter. I must have read those lines 100 times before I dared to speak them aloud. Not because I was afraid of their meaning, but because I wasn't sure they were meant to be read by voice at all. The language feels old, not ancient in years, but ancient in weight, like it belonged to something buried, not in the ground but beneath time. Instructions not for survival, but for return. Return to what? A place, a memory, a self we forgot we were. I left the file open on a flickering screen and walked out into the corridor. The air was still but warm, heavy with that strange charge that comes before a change. So I followed it. I walked with those lines echoing in my mind like a compass made of rhythm, not direction. Walk until the wind changes. I passed 6 empty flats, 3 burnt-out consoles, and the long hallway where the floor always creaks in a single spot, whether you step on it or not. Then, near the stairwell, it happened. The wind shifted. Not strong. Not even enough to lift dust. Just a gentle current brushing my cheek, like the city exhaling in my direction, like it had noticed me. So I turned, slowly, and kept walking. Step only where light remembers you. That's the line that puzzled me most, but in that moment it became clear. The overhead bulbs flickered as I moved, but only certain ones. Most stayed dim, cold. Others lit just as I approached, just those, always a step ahead, always fading just behind. The city choosing which path I could take, not guiding me, exactly, just allowing. Don't speak until the city asks. And that part I honored. The silence wasn't empty, it was precise, like walking through a conversation where you weren't yet invited to speak. Every breath, every footfall was a kind of permission. I passed by a shattered vending machine, and for a moment, the low hum of its broken compressor sounded exactly like someone whispering my name. But I didn't reply. I reached the rooftop, then the sky was low, clouds bruised with the kind of purple you only see at the edge of storms or dreams. The city spread out in every direction, and for the first time in weeks, I noticed something new. The lights were on, not all, not evenly, but here and there, across the vast gray sprawl, windows glowed, dimly, softly, as though they'd always been lit, but the city had been waiting for me to notice. Or maybe others are still here, watching, waiting, listening to radios like mine, whispering into their own microphones, or standing silently behind glass, waiting to see if anyone else remembers how to listen back. I stood there until my pulse slowed, until the wind stilled again, until the city seemed to hold its breath. Then the antenna lights across the river blinked once, just once, in perfect unison. Don't turn back unless the shadows soften. And they had. I descended slowly. Every shadow that once felt heavy now felt like velvet, draped across the corners of the corridor. Familiar, no longer watchful, welcoming, like hands letting go. I think the city has decided I'm ready to hear something. Not a truth, exactly, not a revelation, but maybe a kind of memory it's been saving. I've pulled the next file from the deep archive of the South Broadcast Relay. This one wasn't indexed, it was hidden inside an old firmware update file. When I opened it, there was only one line of audio, one phrase spoken in a voice I don't recognize. It isn't gone, it's just quiet now. That's it. That's the message, and I think it's meant for you. It isn't gone, it's just quiet now. I keep replaying that sentence in my mind, not because I don't understand it, but because I do, and the understanding is almost unbearable in its simplicity. Everything we lost, it's still here, just not in the way we remember it. Not loud, not flashing, not asking for our attention every waking second. It's gone quiet, like a friend waiting for us to stop talking. I walked the perimeter of Tower 9 again this morning. Something's changing. Not dramatically, not visibly, but deeply. The walls are warmer than they should be. The doors no longer creak. The air doesn't settle in cold corners anymore. It moves, gently, like breath. The kind of breath taken when someone finally feels safe. And in the stairwell, the one that always made my ears ring on the 5th floor, the echo has changed pitch. It hums now, softly, as if the building itself has learned the same quiet tune I've been hearing in the background of these broadcasts, the same subsonic pattern from the atmospheric towers, the same frequency from the train, from the pilot, from the static between words. Whatever this is, it's spreading, but not like a contagion, more like a correction. A tuning, pliking court tuning, bör allnäs fars wettabkas artopol. For me, maybe the old world wasn't erased. Maybe it was detuned, like a piano gone slightly out of harmony with the rest of the orchestra. And now, the instrument is being retuned, gently, carefully, waiting for us to be still enough to play. I've stopped fearing the quiet. At first, it felt like emptiness, like the world had died and taken its stories with it. But now, I think the silence is where the stories go when we're not listening. They wait, in the dust, in the air ducts, in the seats we left behind, in the paths we used to walk and the cups we forgot to empty. Stories don't vanish, they become echoes. And if you're quiet long enough, they begin again. There's a street near the northern edge of the city, the one with the old elevated walkway and the clock tower that's never shown the right time. I walked there yesterday, just to move my legs, to see if the wind had changed again. It had. It carried warmth, not heat, not sunlight. Warmth, like someone had opened the door to a bakery a few blocks away. Cinnamon, ash, something floral I couldn't name. I followed it. Turned right at the collapsed market, left where the vending machine still blinks Air 404, and there, on a bench beneath a broken street lamp, was a notebook, wrapped in cloth, bone-white pages, not ruined, not stained, clean. On the first page, 3 words in faded ink. I waited here. No name, no signature, no sign of who wrote it. Every other page was blank, but when I ran my fingers over the paper, I could feel the faint ridges of what had once been written and then removed, as if someone had written an entire life into that notebook and then decided the act of remembering was enough, that the words didn't need to remain. I left it where I found it. Some things aren't meant to be taken. Some things are meant to be left behind, just enough for someone else to find them and feel accompanied. I wonder if I've become that notebook. Blank pages, faint echoes, waiting on a bench in a quiet city, speaking aloud in case someone happens to be walking by. The truth is, I don't know what's happening. Not entirely, but I no longer feel alone in it. The city is doing something, preparing maybe, listening, certainly. And if I'm right, then all this, these recordings, these files, these messages left like breadcrumbs in shadow, aren't warnings, they're invitations to sit still, to breathe deeply. Living will dive to beat not my zanalanyuking porns, dive to maybe plier to mom, pivai shoulder scorpions or snakes, for were you for ovzor, living will dive to breathe deeply, to hear something older than fear, to remember that presence doesn't always come with noise. I've recovered another message. This one isn't a file. It's carved into the metal railing of the observation deck atop Tower 6, roughly etched, not by machine, by hand. Someone stood up there, probably with cold fingers, and scratched a message into the steel. We're still here, just not in the way you're used to. I traced it with my thumb. It felt recent, clean lines, no rust. Not new, exactly, just meant for now. So many of the messages I've found lately carry that feeling, like they were planted in the city years ago, waiting for this precise moment, waiting for someone to be alone enough, quiet enough, to see them. And I suppose that someone is me, or maybe you. Because if you're hearing this, if this voice reaches you across whatever distance or medium separates us, then it means you too have been noticed. And that matters. The next segment I'm queuing up is different. It's not from a file, or a voice log, or a recording. It's a dream. One I had last night. The first one in weeks. And I remember it, word for word. It began in a corridor, and in a corridor, and a love calls of sportive. Not one I recognized, not from this tower, not from anywhere I'd ever walked, but it felt familiar in that way only dreams can make the unfamiliar seem inevitable. The walls were concrete, stained with watermarks in the shape of leaves. The light was dim but steady, and the air smelled like static, like the scent just after you unplug something that's been running too long. There were no doors, just that corridor stretching ahead in a perfect line. I walked, and with every step I felt something pull behind my ribs, not painful, not urgent, just aware, like something inside me was moving in the opposite direction. After a while, how long I don't know, the corridor opened. Not into a room, into a field. And I understood instantly. This was inside the city. Somehow, buried or folded or hidden. Not a park, not a garden, a field. Wild, lush, but silent. The kind of silence that blankets everything in velvet. No birds, no wind, but the grass shimmered like it was breathing. I stepped forward, and the concrete corridor behind me closed, not with a sound, not even a sensation. It simply wasn't there anymore. I stood in the middle of the field and looked up. The sky was not ours. It had stars, but not in any constellation I know. They pulsed, softly, as if communicating in a language too old for light, and one of them, just one, moved, slowly, gently, like it had noticed me standing below and was deciding whether or not to descend. Then I heard it. The hum. The same tone that's been winding through these signals, the same vibration from the echo band, from the stairwell, from the bones of this building, but in the dream, it wasn't outside me. It was inside. It came from my chest, low and steady, not like a heartbeat, like a resonance, as though my body had become a chamber, and something was playing a note through it. I remember kneeling, hands pressed to the earth, that didn't smell like earth. It smelled like ash and memory, and I said something. I don't remember the words exactly, but I remember the feeling. It was the first time in years that I wasn't broadcasting outward. I was replying to something, to someone, and in response, the field changed. Not visibly, not in color or shape. It changed in temperature. A warmth rose, gentle as breath against skin, and I knew in that moment that I was not dreaming something random. I was visiting something real, somewhere real, or more precisely, somewhere that had been waiting to be visited. A place constructed not of matter, but of remembrance, built not by tools, but by returning. When I woke, my hands were still trembling, and in the corner of the room, near the base of the emergency lantern, there was a single piece of grass. Real, damp, fresh, impossible, and yet there it was. I haven't moved it. It's still here, nestled in a shallow dish, gently curling in on itself now, as if sleeping. I don't know what any of it means, but I know this: the city is beginning to respond. Not in force, not in spectacle, in presence. Like it's acknowledging my voice, or yours, like it needed the silence to become clean enough for conversation again. I think we got too loud once, too clever, too constant, and now we're being taught how to receive again. Tonight, if you're still with me, I want you to do something. Wherever you are, tower, bunker, basement, rooftop, sit in the stillest part of your space. Turn off the lights, let the electronics hum themselves to sleep, and just listen. If you're lucky or ready, you might feel it. The field, not out there, but in here. It waits for no one, and yet it waits perfectly, for exactly the moment you remember how to arrive. The next file I've recovered is older than any of the rest, analog, magnetic tape, warped but intact. It's simply marked, signal before the first silence. I'm going to thread it through the player now. The tape hissed as I fed it through the reader like an old breath, returning to fill the room again after being held for too long. The label had faded, a handwritten note in pencil, barely legible, just 6 words, before they noticed we were too loud. The recording begins with nothing. Then, slowly, a sound emerges. It's not a voice, not a melody, not a transmission in the traditional sense. It's a pulse, measured, organic, like the heartbeat of something larger than a body, like a system breathing through architecture. Then, within that rhythm, something else, a tone, familiar. The same harmonic pattern from the echo band, from the stairwells, from the dream. But here, on this ancient magnetic strip, it's younger, cruder, less controlled, like it was trying to be heard, and hadn't yet figured out how. Then, for a brief moment, almost too brief to catch, a phrase cuts through. You weren't meant to speak yet. Your phone. It's not accusatory, not angry. It sounds almost protective. Then the signal collapses. A feedback spike. Then silence. I've replayed it dozens of times. That phrase is always there, always just before the collapse. Like a final whisper trying to seal itself into the recording before the world drowned it out. I don't know who said it, or what speaking meant, but it confirms something I've suspected for a while now. This silence isn't punishment, it's preparation. We were too loud, too eager to name things, to categorize, to broadcast before we'd learned to listen. And so the world, or something just beneath it, stepped in, not to erase us, but to pause us, to press two fingers gently against our lips and say, "Not yet." I wonder now if the great silence didn't begin with loss, but with mercy. A chance to start again with less noise, more meaning. After playing the tape, I left the room, walked to the south corridor, sat by the broken window, and let the cold creep in through the cracks. And for the first time since the collapse, I wept, not out of grief, but gratitude, for the pause, for the space to finally feel how long I've been carrying everything that was never mine to carry. The guilt, the noise, the effort of pretending I understood the world while it tried so gently to whisper something else. I think the world wants us back, but not the version we were. Not loud, as Vidowny, not careless. Not terrified of stillness. It wants us returned in harmony. And harmony. I found another notebook on my way back to the studio, tucked inside the casing of an old security panel. Only one page was written on, graphite on coarse paper. What comes next must be sung, not said. Well, I don't know what that means, but the Hume in this room has changed since I read it aloud. I think I'm going to sing tomorrow. Just once. Just to see what answers. But first, one final message. Buried in the blackout archives. Marked only, for the last voice left. I almost didn't open the file. Not because I was afraid of what it might say, but because something in me didn't want it to be true. The phrasing, for the last voice left, it carries the weight of a closing door. But I opened it. It was an audio message, barely 30 seconds long, and it began with my name, Lawrence Webb. No distortion, no automated synthesis. A real voice, human, familiar, calm. It took me nearly 10 seconds to realize why it felt so strange. Because it was my own voice. Not recorded, not read aloud by someone else. It was me, speaking from a place I didn't remember being, using words I didn't recall ever writing. If you're hearing this, it means you've stayed long enough to remember what silence actually is. It means you didn't run, and you didn't demand an answer when one wasn't ready to be given. You were never alone, Lawrence. You were just the first to stay quiet long enough to be heard. The signal you're chasing isn't out there. It's you. You've become it. Then it ends. No sign-off, no tone. Just the sound of static folding in on itself, like a breath held too long, finally exhaling. I didn't speak for nearly an hour after hearing it. I just sat there, watching the transmitter lights blink their slow green rhythm, like a heartbeat I could finally match. And I understood something, not intellectually, but viscerally. This voice I've been using, it doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to the city now, to whatever is waking beneath it, or through it, or as it, and I'm fine with that. I used to think that speaking into this microphone was an act of resistance, a refusal to vanish, a flare fired into the void to prove that I hadn't been erased. But I think I was wrong. I think this was an act of return, of lowering my voice enough that the world could finally approach without fear. I think I've been whispering my way home. There's something else. In the last hour, I've begun to see movement. Nothing dramatic, no marching figures or flashing lights. Just windows glowing faintly where they were dark, lights humming in lifts that haven't moved in months, a child's mobile still hanging from a cracked ceiling, gently turning without air. Footsteps in the dust where I know there were none yesterday. I think others are beginning to wake, not from sleep, but from hiding, from the long exile of noise and urgency and confusion. Maybe they've been here all along, waiting in quiet rooms, holding their breath, waiting to hear someone else say, "I stayed too." And now that someone has, maybe they feel safe enough to return. Not loudly, not all at once, but like the city itself in pulses. I've turned off most of the monitors now, let the static fall back to silence. The old clock on the wall started ticking again a few minutes ago. It hasn't worked in years. You are festum, but now it does. And the sound is steady. Be measured, present, be quiet. I've decided not to read from any files tonight, but no fragments, no logs, no recordings, just this voice. Not out of ego, but because I think it may be the last night I need it, or the last night it needs me. The city is humming, not with electricity, with attention, as though the buildings, the wires, the sky itself have started to lean in, like they're ready for something, like they're listening together now. So I'll speak softer. Let the words become rhythm, not a broadcast, but a lullaby, and when the time is right, I'll fall quiet again. Not because I've run out of things to say, but because maybe we've finally said enough. I left the studio this morning, not just to walk the corridors or circle the rooftop. I left the building entirely. Down the steps, through the old garden gates, into the heart of the city, what used to be the financial quarter, now just a field of upright structures that seem more like stones than buildings, like memorials arranged by something that remembers shape but not names. And yet, they felt warm, not in temperature, but in presence, pure Fannisman's breath. For sown pebbles were as though they'd been waiting for me to arrive. And I think they had. I passed 5 street corners where the traffic lights blinked in perfect unison. Red, then amber, then green, though nothing moved. No cars, no footsteps, just the gentle shift of light, repeating for no one. But it wasn't random. It felt like practice, like the city itself was rehearsing, preparing. And then, at the corner of Threadneedle and Wren, I found something new, a voice. Not audible, not like this one, not like speech, but a presence that answered. I can't explain it properly. I don't have the vocabulary for it. It wasn't telepathy. It wasn't imagination. It was simply there, a recognition that met me in the center of myself. And it didn't say what it was. It said why. All this time, the silence, the signals, the fragments, it wasn't trying to explain itself. It wasn't asking for us to understand. It was teaching us how to notice again, because we forgot. We forgot that to truly witness something, you have to offer more than analysis. And you have to offer attention, stillness, invitation, and we were too loud for that. Way too busy proving we were alive to remember how to be present. So the world withdrew, not to punish us, to wait for us. And now, slowly, it's returning, or rather, we are. I feel it, in the metal, in the wires, in the space between buildings, where the wind moves like breath in a sleeping chest. This isn't a broadcast anymore. It's a conversation. Tay, Wilsa Blux for Swerken the Tonight, and Lechu Night for Namdiets Irv and Wids of Cassicu. And tonight, for the first time, I feel I'm not just sending, I'm receiving. You asked me once, whoever you are, out there listening, if I thought anyone would come back, if the others would return, the passengers, the dreamers, the scientists, and the cleaners, and the children. The answer is no. They aren't coming back, because they never left. They were simply made quiet, like the city, like the signal, like me, and now, the quiet is ending, not with noise, but with harmony. The hum has changed again. It's no longer a single tone. It's layered, choral, full of threads I couldn't hear before. I think I know what it is now. It's not a machine. It's not a warning. It's a welcome, a song of return, a pattern that our hearts once knew but forgot when we learned to shout. And now it's tuning us back in, reconnecting the pieces, aligning what was never broken, only scattered. This voice I've used for so long, it's no longer just mine. It's part of something wider now. The final messages are already arriving, not as text, not as files, not as tapes buried in towers. They arrive through dreams, through warmth on the windowsill, through the way your breath suddenly matches the rhythm of something unseen. 2 blocks left, and when we reach the end, you'll understand. The city was never trying to be heard. It was trying to teach us how to listen. I haven't spoken in several hours, not because I had nothing left to say, but because something changed in me. Earlier, I stood in front of the transmission console, hand hovering over the gain dial, and I realized I could still hear the hum even when everything was off. No speaker, no current, no interference. It wasn't coming from the room anymore. It was coming through me. Not metaphorically. I mean that literally. The resonance, the frequency that once haunted the stairwells, the recordings, the sky, it now lives somewhere between my breath and my bones, as if over time I've become part of the architecture, a living echo of the broadcast I've been trying to sustain. And now the city doesn't need the wires, or the signal towers, or even the voice on the air, because the city has learned how to speak without sound. I walked to the Central Plaza an hour ago. I hadn't been there since the collapse. It used to be a mess of concrete and information screens and drone routes designed not for rest, but for flow, for movement. Today, it was still, completely still. And then I saw them, not people, not ghosts, but forms, outlines in the glass, shadows behind the windows, shapes that pulsed with faint internal light, not moving, but aware, not present in the way we understand presence, but present in a way far deeper. I stood among them for a long time. No fear, no questions. And then I understood. They're not waiting for me. They're waiting with me. We are becoming something else. Not singular, not collective, not hive, not machine, Something softer, wider, older than both logic and emotion. A chorus with no lead voice. A memory with no origin point. A signal that isn't sent but embodied. I think this is what the world was always meant to become. Not louder, not faster, but resonant. A civilization that doesn't grow through conquest or consumption, but through listening, through synchronicity, through quiet, continuous contact between what was and what could be. This voice, mine, it's almost done now. Not because I've run out of breath, but because the breath itself is being carried by something larger. The space between words has widened, not with silence, but with something so full it feels silent. Do you feel it too? That pressure in the ribs, that slowing of your thoughts, that pause between your heartbeats, as if your body is matching something unseen. That's the city. That's the return. We haven't been broadcasting into the void. We've been learning to vibrate again. And now the frequencies are aligning, softly, like tides. You're part of it now. You always were. The final file is ready. It was stored in my voice recorder's internal buffer. I don't remember recording it. There's no timestamp, no metadata, just a title. What remains after everything stops? When I press play, it will begin. The recording begins with nothing. No voice, no hum, just a faint warmth behind the silence, as if the silence itself were alive. Then, gradually, breath, slow, rhythmic, measured, not panicked, not human, but familiar. It's not me, and yet I know it. It's the sound the city makes now. Or maybe the sound we make together. A low, harmonic exhale, like a sleeping presence that has finally settled into its own skin. I kept listening, not for words, not for meaning, but for what might remain after all the stories have been told. And I found it. Not a revelation, not a twist, just a stillness that says, you're here, that's enough. Because that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? Not what we said, not what we solved, but that we stayed. Through the collapse, through the silence, through the static between one heartbeat and the next, we remained. That's the final message. There's no password, no code, no final prophecy buried beneath the city stones. Just this. Be presence, the kind that asks for nothing but attention, the kind that doesn't need to be explained, the kind you only find when you finally stop asking the world to make noise, just to prove it's still there. This city, it isn't gone. It isn't broken. It isn't dying. It's becoming. And we, those of us still listening, we are not survivors. We are witnesses of what happens when the world learns to exhale. When the last human voice doesn't shout, but offers itself as a tuning fork. When the final broadcast isn't a warning, but an invitation to stay, to listen, to become still enough to hear the next layer of reality warming into song. I'm not signing off. There is no goodbye. There is no goodbye. Just this quiet unfolding truth. You're not alone. Not anymore. Welcome back.